Dr. Colby back here again, and we're going to talk about one of the most important and probably overlooked concepts when it comes to healing and why you are not getting the results that you expect, okay? We call this nervous system regulation. I call it chilling out. Okay. I call it not falling into the trap of the matrix and giving your body a chance. Because the way that we live our lives in today's crazy world isn't one that's sustainable if you want to heal. And so the question is, what does that mean and how do we address that and still be a human? Okay, so we first have to get some education because you have to understand what this even means so that you can understand how to apply it. So the most important concept to take away is this, is that your body, anyone's body, cannot be optimal or heal or get the results that you want if you're under constant stress. Balance is the key to healing, okay? So specifically what this means for you is that the autonomic nervous system, which this is everything that happens automatically, right? You don't eat food and you aren't like, oh, I need to digest my food. You don't sit in a sauna and be like, oh, body, can you start sweating? All of these things happen automatically. Right. And so the goal of this entire conversation is to understand the two branches of the autonomic nervous system and understand how we can support them so that you can put yourself in the most optimal state, because you can only heal. Nutrients, blood flow, nerve flow, and lymphatic flow can only push those necessary things to your internal organs if you're in a parasympathetic state, which is why this is called the rest and digest. You're resting and you're eating food. The opposite of that is called the sympathetic branch or the fight or flight branch. This is what happens when we're under chronic stress. This is needed, right? This is the exact opposite. Blood and nerve and lymphatic flow is going to our brain and lungs and our arms and legs because your body thinks you need to run from a snake or from a bear or from a lion. So it's like, well, you don't need to digest food now, because who cares about that? It's like when you get nervous, right? What oftentimes happens? You have to go to the bathroom because your body's like, well, we don't care about what's in there right now. Let's excrete all of that because we want to push the blood and the input to the right places to handle the stress. The issue is that we're spending way too much time in this fight or flight stage in today's chronic world because you get a notification on your phone, you get an email, you get a call from your boss, something happens to your kids. Well, instantaneously, you're in that stress mode. So if you aren't consciously balancing out these two branches, meaning if you aren't spending basically more time in this rest and digest, you cannot have optimal health. Cannot, will not have optimal health. Most people have not even felt what it's like to be relaxed in months or years. So it's like, good luck trying to have good health. So here's another explanation of what happens, which I'm not going to spend too much time. This is pretty in-depth, but what happens with these two branches, right? Again, the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. We see basically our heart rate slows, the air to our lungs constricts. We have more saliva, more GI things happening. So you're basically resting and digesting. The opposite is true for this sympathetic branch, right? We get wide pupils, our heart rate accelerates, our lungs need more capacity, and everything that's happening with your digestive tract and hormones basically shuts down. So we can see if we aren't spending time in the rest and digest, you aren't allowing the food to digest and absorb, you aren't allowing the internal organs to get the necessary input they need to recover from the day. So this is the big picture, is that when you're under stress, you're inherently stimulating the sympathetic branch. And when you're doing that, your internal organs can't restore or recover the way that they need to. And when you're doing this for prolonged periods of time, it's going to be impossible to regulate your healing and to have balance and to have optimal health. Okay? So this is pretty in-depth, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. But if you want to read more about this, these are all amazing individuals. Some are quite old, like Hans Selle is, I want to say early 1900s, if not maybe even like 1920s. But basically there's three physical changes that happen with stress. You get a cortisol and adrenaline production, which makes your adrenal glands enlarged. The thymus gland, which controls your immune function, basically shuts down. And then your digestive tract gets a whole bunch of issues, ulcers, small intestine. So we see here, these are physical changes that he found that dramatically happen with chronically stressed animals. So he basically chronically stressed some animals versus ones that didn't, and then he would dissect the animals, and all of these changes take place. So these changes are taking place in you if you're under chronic stress, whether you want them to or not, which is why it's imperative that you give yourself the optimal capacity to actually understand what it feels like to not be in chronic stress so that we can allow our bodies to, again, rest and recover. So most people are like, yeah, I understand stress. I get into a car accident, I'm stressed at work, but there's other stresses that happen whether you know it or not, like just life responsibilities, finances, fears, relationships. And there's things that happen like to our actual physiology. Exercise is a stress. Not having your blood sugar aligned is a stress. Not getting proper sleep is a stress. Not being hydrated, that's a stress to your physiology. So whether it's coming from a psychological or it's coming from your actual physiology, you have to be aware of these impacts because we have to decrease this throughout the day as much as you can control so that we don't create these long-term changes with our internal organs and glands, okay? So some more just ideas here is that here are the 3 stages of chronic stress. First, there's the alarm, which this is normal and should happen, but then your body starts to resist this and then you get exhausted. Most people are at this, we'll call it like the burnout stage in today's world, but the goal is to, when the alarm happens, for you to be aware of that, for you to process that, and then for you to readapt without becoming in this resistance stage. So if you want to learn more about this, about how humans keep stress in the body, highly recommend this author, Peter Levine. He created a specific, call it like a specific therapy type. It's called somatic experiencing, SE. Really good about how to release trauma and actually release these stressful frequencies in the body. But it's just a really good phase to know. And it first starts with awareness, right? So what I recommend for most individuals to do, again, the optimal would be you're spending 12 hours throughout a 24-hour clock in a rest and digest and 12 hours in a fight or flight stage, okay? So let's just think about it. You're sleeping in bed, let's call it 9 hours a night, total in bed, sleeping for 8 hours, right there's 9 out of 12, okay? You're spending 30 minutes, we'll call it, 3 times a day eating, so that's 10 and a half hours. That means that on the bookends of the day, in the AM and PM, you're spending 45 to an hour relaxing, decompressing, having conversation with your family, relaxing, playing a game with your family, going for walks, having sex, communicating, whatever that means for you, meditating, journaling, so that you can get that 12 hours a day should be in that rest and digest. And here are some other options for you to think about. So, like, if you are prioritizing this, the first step that I would do is just record your day. 15-minute blocks, record where you're at and what you're doing with each block. I know it sounds like it's crazy, but if you do this, the productivity and awareness you'll have throughout your day, if you do it for 2 days, will dramatically change. You'll be like, wow, I didn't realize I'm spending so much time doing this or that or that. And then you go through and you either first take away, and then next is you add about what you're going to do with that time that you're going to change. So instead of watching TV shows or doom scrolling or doing random things that you know aren't actually productive, it's like, I'm going to incorporate now going for a walk, having a conversation with my spouse, not watching TV, whatever it is, so we can get to that 50-50 practice of rest and digest and fight or flight. Okay. Step 2 is that we're big advocates of a technique called Buteyko breathing, because inherently what's happening in terms of your internal physiology is you're increasing the CO2. And by increasing your CO2, you're allowing your body to then be in that rest and digest phase. So I'm not going to spend too much time on here because there are experts that this is their entire life and life work and life practice. But we're going to recommend one breathing technique for the world, it would be Buteyko breathing. It's ultimately slow and shallow breathing throughout the day. Okay. So instead of going, you're literally breathing out all of your CO2, the ideal amount of breaths per 60 seconds would be 5.5. So you see it's like a really slow. So I recommend to start slow, do 3-5 minutes, a handful of times a day, because this will inherently put you into a calm state, back into that rest and digest before prayer, before meditating, before even exercise. It's going to be an extremely powerful tool that you can find loads of information online. So don't hesitate. If you need to use a technique like this to calm your mind, to get you into this rest and digest, this is a technique I highly recommend. So what are your action steps? You're going to track your total amount of time using 15-minute increments, either using a Google Drive sheet or some other way that you like to do it, so you can see exactly where you're at. And then you're going to create more time if you need, so you can spend 55 hours and 12 hours in a rest and digest and a fight or flight stage. And then next would be, if you need to practice a breathing technique, one that, again, we think is important would be the Buteyko. Breathing daily so that you can have a tool to calm your mind and easily get into that rest and digest phase. We hope you found this valuable. A few FAQs we get is like, what if my schedule is slammed? How do I do this? If that's the case, it means that you have to then be even more diligent about not wasting time throughout the day. It also means on your recovery days, it's active recovery, not active productivity. It also means that you might have to outsource some things that you do, cleaning, clothes, you name it, so that you aren't doing all of those tasks at home, so you can actually be in a calm state. So whether it's outsourcing, whether it's being proactive about your day, whether it's not wasting your day doing things that are not productive to your health, you're going to have to be even more diligent if that's the case. If you feel stressed daily, how do I release stress from the body? There's a few different techniques that we have, different courses and online practitioners that we have access to that we can send your way. But I would say, number one, the reason that we're prioritizing this is that if you don't give your nervous system a chance, you're going to feel stressed. So this means you have to be even more diligent about your inputs, which for me would be like, I would erase all social media, get off there instantaneously. I would only check my email 2 to 3 times a day. I mean, again, your email is like, that would be like if you went to your mailbox 15 times a day. Like, that's what some people are doing when it comes to checking their email. They're checking their email 15 times a day. Like, you wouldn't, if you saw someone walking to their mailbox 15 times a day, you'd be like, that person's a psychopath. Well, so let's not do that, right? You have to be aware, hyper aware of your inputs. I can't emphasize that enough, because if you do that, which starts with creating awareness by actually understanding where you're at first, which is why I want you to track it first, because then I can guarantee you can find more time throughout your day, because all of us, including myself, find myself wasting time. I'm like, I know I shouldn't be doing that. That's not smart. Well, how do you do that? You take away notifications. You take away social media. You take away Netflix. You take away fill in the blank. You outsource what you can outsource. You may need to get a chef or a meal planner, someone to come clean your house. You may have to spend more time preparing for the week on the weekend, whatever it means for you. You have to do those things to set yourself up for success. So I hope you found this valuable. This is one of the most critical pieces to healing, to understand how to balance and regulate your nervous system, because if you can't do this and you don't create the space with constant inputs, nothing else you do will matter, because your body will be in that chronic stress state and you won't get the proper blood and nerve and lymphatic flow to the organs to recover, which will impact everything else downstream. Chat to you soon. Hope you have a great rest of your day.